Welcome to Adventure Unfiltered. When Mollie Hughes joined us the last time, we talked about Everest, the fear, the pressure, the risk, and what it takes to keep moving in the world's most hostile vertical environment. Well, this time the landscape is much different and much flatter, whiter, quieter, and in many ways harder. So what happens when you remove the mountain, the team and the summit? And what happens when there's no drama to respond to, just distance, repetition and your own thoughts? Well, we find out in this episode of Adventure Unfiltered as we travel to Antarctica. Mollie skied solo and unassisted for nearly 700 miles, hauling everything she needed across a continent that strips absolutely everything away. No colour, no sound, no smell, no one else. As we release this episode just after Christmas 2025, it mirrors the moment Mollie herself was out there 6 years ago, still moving across the Antarctic ice, while most of us were gathered indoors, warm and distracted. So this isn't a story about suffering for the sake of it. It's a story about what solitude reveals. So let's go. This is Mollie Hughes and the Deafening Silence of Antarctica. First of all, do you want to tell me what you did? Because this is, again, another amazing fact.
So what I did was I skied from a place called Hercules Inlet, which is where the kind of sea ice meets the land mass of the continent. And I skied from that point to the geographic South Pole. So it was just over 700 miles, kind of 1,100 kilometers. But this expedition, unlike my kind of mountaineering ones, I did it solo. So no teammates, no Sherpa guides, just kind of on my own. And it took 57 and a half days in the end to get to the South Pole.
Wow. So you're quite used to these kind of 60-day expeditions, then, aren't you?
A couple of months.
Just a few months. What was the inspiration for this one?
Yeah, good question. And I think it was just a want to see Antarctica. It's an awesome place. Like, it's right at the bottom of Earth. It's the world's biggest desert, even though it's covered in snow and ice. It's the driest continent on Earth. It's never been inhabited by people. And it filled me with kind of awe and wonder. I used to have a housemate when I first moved to Scotland, when I first moved to Edinburgh when I was 24. And he was doing a PhD in glaciology. And he did a couple of field seasons down in Antarctica. And would come back to our little flat by the meadows and just have amazing stories and pictures and videos of this kind of vast continent. And I knew I wanted to somehow see it, somehow spend some time there. Unfortunately, I wasn't a glaciologist. I didn't have any skills that would be particularly useful down there. So you can work down there for a season if you're a scientist, a doctor, a mechanic, any of these kind of skills are useful. And I didn't have any. But I thought, what am I good at? And I'm good at suffering. And I can do that for about 60 days. So I was looking at different expeditions I could do. And I found the one from Hercules Inlet to the South Pole, and it looked amazing. And I realised, again, going back to the kind of sponsorship and the unique selling point, if I did it solo, I realised that I would be the youngest woman to do that. So there was my USP to start using to try and get the money.
Yep.
Unbelievably expensive, even more expensive than Everest. I needed about £75,000. Wow. Still living out my overdraft. Still hadn't made my fortune yet. Still haven't. But I had to raise that money. So yeah, I used that record and trained. Went to Norway, spent a few weeks, months in Norway, training as much as I could. Training here in the UK, dragging car tyres up and down the beaches in North Berwick and East Lothian. And then, at the beginning of November 2019, found myself on a plane to Antarctica.
That's amazing. And you were on the plane by yourself as well. So did you literally, cheerio family, I'll see you, did you have any support go with you or?
Yeah, no, so I flew to Chile to start with. And then in Chile, so the kind of expeditions are run by a logistics company called Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions. And they run out of Chile and then they have a big camp on the edge of the continent. And from there, they do all sorts of things from fun touristy stuff, taking people to see the penguins, flying people to the South Pole for the day and supporting expeditions like the one I was doing. So I flew to Chile, met a few of them in Chile, and then had a week of prep, of sorting out all my kit and all my food, bought so much kind of cheese and butter and dried meats from all the supermarkets and packed all my food away. It took a long time. And then a week later, flew in a massive old Russian plane to Antarctica. A massive plane with no windows, so you couldn't see on Earth where you're going.
Weird.
You could have been taken anywhere.
Sounds like something from a movie.
Yeah, totally. And then the doors open and it's all snow and you're in Antarctica. So based out of Union Glacier Camp, which is their logistic camp, for a couple of days. Then when the weather was good, I was flown by 2 Canadian pilots to Hercules Inlet, about half an hour, 40 minutes, and dropped off. And then that's when my expedition started.
And that's when you started. And I can imagine at the start, you know, like you were talking about Everest, one day at a time. I imagine the first maybe week or so it was kind of like head down, you know, you're focused. I'm really interested to know how you felt, because it is the quietest place on Earth. And it's just you.
Yeah.
In this massive white expanse.
Yeah.
You have your goal and you have your focus and you have your training from Everest. But how does that feel? Did you feel incredibly isolated?
Yeah.
How did you feel?
I mean, the isolation is a huge part of it. And actually, my book, Breathe, ends, the final section is all about isolation. And it's all about, within the book, I look at a lot of kind of psychological research. And I wanted to look at research with people who've spent a long time alone, or even a short amount of time, and all the kind of things that happen to them in their brain. And quite quickly from looking at the research, I was like, this is not good for us. We are social animals. We need to be around people. But I did manage to cope for the almost 58 days down there. I mean, the expedition started well, as you described, but only for about the first couple of hours.
Oh, really?
And it was lovely and calm. And my sled, which weighed like 100 kilos, was coming behind me. And it was lovely for the first couple of hours. But then a big weather front kind of moved in. And that was a weather front that was much bigger than anyone had really expected, like looking at the weather reports. And it stuck on me for the first kind of 9 days of the trip. So the first 9 days of the trip were kind of actually like complete hell. So it was like complete whiteout. So I couldn't see left or right, up or down. The winds were mental. They actually in Antarctica flow from the middle of the continent outwards. So anytime you're going towards the middle to the South Pole, you've got a headwind. And the winds got up to, worst was probably gusts of 60 knots, which is crazy winds. And pitching your tent and putting your tent down and trying to just survive in that kind of environment is hard. And with the winds, temperature drops. So the worst temperature I had in those first couple of weeks was minus 45 with wind chill.
Oh, wow.
So like flesh freezingly cold. So the expedition started just with more suffering than I'd ever experienced. And every day I had to get up and ski, because I had over 700 miles in front of me and a limited amount of supplies in my bag. It wasn't an option just to sit tight for too long. So every day I had to get up, put my tent down, ski as much as I could. And after the first kind of week or so, I was massively behind schedule, like unbelievably behind schedule. But the storm lifted and I could finally see Antarctica in front of me. From that point, there were many lows, a few highs, but I just kind of slowly ate up the miles as I went along. And it was kind of that experience of what you described. When the kind of cloud finally lifted and the winds calmed down, Antarctica is just vast and it's white and there's nothing there really at all in the interior of Antarctica. And I think one of the main things that I realised quickly was that there's no sensory stimulation. So there's nothing to smell. There's nothing really to see apart from white. There's nothing to touch.
Or flat.
Yeah, there's nothing you listen to apart from the kind of rattling of the wind or the scraping of your skis. And that huge sensory deprivation, it plays tricks on you. It is a hard thing to work through.
Let's touch on the lows a little and let's kind of like lean into that a little bit here.
On so many other trips, I've found it reasonably easy to be positive, to look on the bright side of things. But with all the other trips, there was always other people with me. There was firstly guides, so people that were much more experienced than me. There was amazing teammates, amazing friends that I was with. And when there's people around you, it's so much easier to share the kind of emotional load. There's people to make you smile, make you laugh, even just like pitching a tent, the physicalness of it. When you've got somebody else working with you, the jobs are halved. I think maybe it was something like day 17 in Antarctica when I realised I hadn't like laughed or smiled for 17 days.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. There's not a point in my life where I've not laughed or smiled, every hour of every day, I hope. So that was, a huge kind of realisation. And I went to a pretty negative place. So it was kind of after the storm and after I was so behind schedule and the weather kind of improved a bit around me, and my body was doing okay. It had been battered in the first couple of weeks in the storm, but it was okay. But the thing that wasn't working was my head. And it kind of felt like a massive black cloud had come and just sunk over my head, and I couldn't see a way out of it. It was like the whiteout again, but kind of just inside my head. And it was hard and it was weird. I guess been super lucky that I've never really experienced that kind of thing before. Because with the kind of black cloud came a huge amount of negativity, and my kind of mind almost turned on itself. So it was just my internal dialogue turned from usually being positive to things like, why are you here? Why are you down here? Thoughts of you're like absolutely not strong enough to make it to the South Pole. Thoughts that you're not strong enough to make it another couple of days. Thoughts of like, is it my ego that's driven me down here? Is my ego that big that I think I can survive alone in Antarctica? To just like a hugely dark place. And it happened for days on end. A little bit of respite at night when I was in my tent and not slogging up a hill. But as soon as I was up again the next day and going up a hill, this kind of bombardment started. And I had to find a way through it because it wasn't healthy and I wasn't going to last another few days, let alone get anywhere near the South Pole if I didn't change my mindset. So I was kind of racking my brains of something I could do one night in my tent. And I remembered a TED Talk that I watched a few years ago. And the TED Talk was all about the use of positive affirmations. So literally saying positive phrases out loud to try and change your mindset. And they're not phrases of how you feel, because at that point I felt completely rubbish, but they were phrases of how I wanted to feel and how I needed to feel to get to the South Pole. So one night I came up with 3 phrases written down in my book and didn't really think they were going to work. But then the next day I shouted them to Antarctica as loud as I could. And it was incredible how well it worked and how.
What were the 3 phrases?
So the first one was really simple, and it was to say, I am strong. At that point, I never felt weaker, physically or mentally, so I knew I had to be strong. The second one was to say, I'm inspiring people, and that felt really important because it was too hard just to be about me and my own achievements. I knew it had to have some kind of impact on people back home. And the third one was to say, I am a badass, as loud as I possibly could. And that one was important because I felt like I needed to be a badass to get to the South Pole. And at that point in that low state, I definitely wasn't. So I shouted them to Antarctica, and very quickly I laughed at how stupid I felt from shouting fucking badass to nobody in Antarctica. But that was the first kind of positive emotion I'd elicited in weeks. And then each time the black cloud kind of came over me, I would shout my affirmations at it. And after a few days of doing it, it worked. It really worked. And I felt like myself again. I started making better decisions. I started being more positive, and I started to kind of enjoy the trip.
So we've been the lowest of the low.
Yep.
What about the joy? What about those glimmers of joy?
And
Can you remember any?
There were some.
Or was it just all completely difficult and hard? And well, I mean, of course it was. But was there any point you were like, yay,
Yeah.
or
No, there definitely
I can't
was.
believe I'm here?
And there were times, and you had to, when you did see something or you felt something, you had to enjoy it and you had to celebrate it. So things like the small celebrations during the whole trip, I crossed 10 degrees of latitude. Each block was 60 nautical miles in length. So each time I crossed one of those invisible lines in the snow, I would celebrate. I would have one of my special chocolates. I might get some clean pants for the first time in however long.
Yeah.
The little tiny celebrations. But one of the days that I'll always remember, probably one of the best days of my life, was kind of what you spoke about at the beginning. And that was like silence and isolation. And as much as that can be a negative thing for us, it's also something that we need and something that we crave.
Completely agree.
And in Antarctica, it's really windy. It's always windy. The wind's always flowing towards you. It's always kind of headwind. But there was one morning close-ish to the pole, so I was getting close kind of onto the polar plateau. And I kind of realised in the morning that something was missing. So I kind of got up as I did every day, put my tent down, packed my sled, began skiing. And there's always noise because things are rustling, your kit's rustling, your skis are scraping. But then I just kind of stopped after maybe an hour and a half for a break. And I sat on the sled and had some water. And I realised that something was really missing in that. It felt alien and weird, this environment that I'd been in for 50 days just felt completely different. And as I stopped and looked around me, I was like, there's no wind. There's absolutely no wind whatsoever today. And with
Bizarre.
that, it's so weird. And kind of with that lack of wind, all the sound goes. So when I was sat still, There was just like and it wasn't silence I've ever experienced before. It was kind of like thick and viscous, and it kind of covered me all over me, this heavy, heavy silence. And I think probably in that moment in time, it was probably the quietest place in the whole world. Like even today here at OV, it's a quiet place. There's not many people around, but we can hear the birds and we can hear the dog walkers, and the kids are about to come back from camp, so we're going to hear loads of them. You never really find true silence in nature. But in Antarctica, in that one spot close to the polar plateau, there's nothing. There's no life. There's nothing there. And the silence was incredible.
Was it golden?
Yeah, totally. And I think I just sat and absorbed it. I was quite regimented with wanting like 10-minute breaks, but I probably sat for half an hour or something that day and just kind of absorbed it.
Did you find that silence calmed your mind?
100%, yeah. I was like slowed it right down, and I think I was meant to be. Like I had a task to do. I was meant to be skiing towards the South Pole, but I just kind of sat there and just absorbed it for as long as I could.
It's hilarious because I can relate on a day-to-day because things are always so hectic, and in life we never ever get the chance just to sit quietly with our thoughts because there's always a million other things to do. Last weekend, I don't know how the stars aligned, but I was child free and husband free for a whole day. You know, they went off on the Friday and back on the Sunday. And see, that Saturday I actually walked into a room and remembered why I was there. I didn't forget my keys or put my phone down and not know where I put it down. And just having space and time to sit. And I didn't put the telly on, and I just listened to some music. And I know it's nothing like what you're talking about. I mean, that is to the extreme.
It's so important.
But you don't have that kind of that space. Did you ever talk to yourself when you were away? I know that obviously you shouted your affirmations. Was there any time you just like had an open conversation with yourself?
I always say that I never remember doing it, but I probably did, didn't I? I probably did. Like after 50 odd days being alone, I probably was talking. There was definitely a lot of singing to myself.
Yeah. How did it feel when you got to the end point, when you got to the actual pole?
Yeah, like amazing. So I got there on the 10th of January 2020. After kind of 57 and a half days of skiing, and there were people there. There was people from the Union Glacier camp, and they have a camp just outside the actual kind of science base of the South Pole Station, and we just got an opportunity to relax there for a couple of days. There was beer, there was food, there was warm tents,
brilliant!
There was nice people to chat to, but just a few people. Which was good. I think if I was inundated with loads of people, it would have been hard.
What was it like seeing somebody for the first time? Did you hug them?
Totally.
Did you say, hi, don't touch me, this is weird?
No, I definitely hug people. And one of the biggest compliments I think I'll probably ever get, and it's maybe a weird one, but one of the guys who worked at the camp, as I came in and I was chatting to them and gave them a hug, and we spent a bit of time together, he was like, I think you're not the best, but the most sane person I've seen coming in after a 60-day expedition, which I think is the biggest accolade I could ever have.
Maybe we should put that at the start of the podcast.
Exactly. That's way better. Most sane, because that's the hard thing. Like the whole expedition, you're trying to stay physically fit and stay mentally fit and stay in control and not lose yourself being alone. And for him to say that, I was like, okay, that's good.
Huge.
I've achieved it. It doesn't matter how long it took to get here.
It's the affirmations.
Yeah.
It's the affirmations. Let's talk about the book. Your stories are just so inspiring. And when I was thinking about meeting with you and thinking about what we're going to talk about, one of the questions that I had around about the book was, how on earth do you process everything that you've gone through and those thoughts to be able to pull your experiences together? Where did the idea of the book come from?
And it took a long time to frame it and to work out what I wanted the book to be. Definitely took a long time. I always knew I didn't want a book just about me and my own adventures. I knew it had to be a bigger thing than that. I always wanted to write a book. Through every expedition, I kept like really good diaries every single night, so I could retrace where I was and retrace kind of the emotional state I was in and what I was seeing and experiencing. So the book Breathe is I would call it like a psychological exploration of adventure, and that's what I'm really interested in. I think so many people talk and write about the physicality of these adventures and how hard it is, but nobody really drills down on the psychology and the emotional side of it. That is, I think, way more important. I think doing any of these trips is 90% in our heads, 10% in our bodies. It's so much more than what people kind of attribute to it being mentally. So yeah, the book is 7 sections, different psychological themes from fear to pressure to self-belief to trauma to isolation, resilience. In each section, I kind of zoom in on a part of my expedition. So it could be crossing those ladders in the Khumbu Icefall covered in blood, feeling the fear. I zoom out, I look at psychological research of what fear actually is and what's actually happening within our body. And I talk more about my adventures. And then for each section, I also interview other adventurers, because I think any kind of psychological study, psychological analysis, just about one person's experience and one person's brain isn't enough. So I knew I had to add in a few more people. So I interviewed some amazing, lovely people about their experiences. So for example, for the fear section, I speak to an amazing guy called Ayo Akinwelere, and he is a TV presenter. He was the first black presenter of Blue Peter back in the day, and on Blue Peter you have to do all sorts of things that scare you, and Ayo actually had a complete fear of water and of swimming. He couldn't swim, and then Blue Peter decided to send him to the Mariana Trench and task him with swimming 5 miles across the Mariana Trench.
Wow.
So huge, unbelievable amounts of fear. So I wanted to talk to him about how he coped with it, how he learnt to swim, and how he stopped this deeply ingrained fear that he had from childhood. So I explored that with him, and then I speak to people like Anne Daniels, who's an amazing polar explorer, British polar explorer, about her facing polar bears in the north and
Oh, no thanks.
Yeah, geez.
I mean, I've faced grizzlies and black bears, but no, polar bears, it's just a whole other level.
Like terrifying.
Yeah.
And hers is all about resilience. And there was one trip where her and her teammates, they were stuck in a storm, their tent had collapsed, and they just spent 3 days lying under the kind of tent cover, surviving for 3 days in the north. So really interesting people that I spoke to and kind of zoomed in on their psychology of these different themes. So yeah, really pleased with how the book's come out. It came out in May this year. And yeah, I've been speaking about it and sharing it as much as I can.
Yeah, it's so relatable in so many levels, you know, so when you're talking, I'm like, gosh, that reminds me of this, and it's exactly the same when it was like this for me, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a mountain or a ridge or something, it can be something tiny, and that's what I love about the book. It's so relatable, and you can understand, you can relate to these things and use them for the day-to-day.
Good. And that's exactly what I wanted. And I think when I was kind of pitching the book, I think anyone that was listening, like publishers and stuff, were worrying that it was just a book about adventures that were unachievable or unrelatable. But yeah, to hear that you can actually relate to it, that's exactly what I needed, because people don't need to go off and climb Everest. They definitely don't need to go and spend 2 months alone in Antarctica. But we all have our own challenges, and the kind of psychological techniques that I talk about can be applied to absolutely anything, any of life's challenges.
Mollie, this has been wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's been such an inspiration. I have another question before we finish up, I guess, is that have these big experiences changed you?
Yeah, like so much. And it's hard to, and I think as humans, we have a huge ability to change and to grow. And we have that ability throughout our whole lives, and we're not stuck personalities, and we're not stuck with who we are. We can change and we can adapt, and we can become more resilient, we can become stronger, we can become calmer, we can control our emotions more. And I've definitely learned that over the last 15 years of doing this. When I was Jessica's age, so she's 15 now.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I was like the shyest kid in class. At school, I had no confidence. I would never put my hand up and answer a question. So I've gained so much confidence and self-belief through doing these trips, and I think through the power of the outdoors and the power of pushing myself. So yeah, super grateful for all the experiences that I've had. But yeah, I mean, as I said, we can all change and we can all grow at any point in our lives.
And what's next?
Good question. So big focus now, no big expeditions on the horizon, personally, but now with Ocean Vertical, very busy. We're here today, lots going on. In 2 weeks' time, I'm heading to the Himalayas. So we now run expeditions twice a year to Nepal, and we take people trekking. So in 2 weeks' time, I've got 12 clients coming out with me, and we're going into the Everest region, not to base camp, but we're kind of avoiding the busy trails and going up to Gokyo Lakes, the highest freshwater lake system in the world. Spending a bit of time up there. In March, back out there in the Annapurna region, doing the Mardi Himal with a group of 14 clients. After that, I've got a couple of clients from America coming to join me, and we're going to Bhutan and to do another trek.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, trying to travel as much as I can with Ocean Vertical and show other people the mountains, and adventures in Scotland as well, showing people the mountains and kind of the ocean of Scotland as well.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. And yeah, the book's available now from Amazon or book shops, other outlets.
Anywhere online, any good bookseller.
What a conversation. It just shows that Antarctica doesn't confront you in the way that Everest does. It empties absolutely everything out. And what I loved about this conversation was how honestly Mollie talked about boredom, fear, self-doubt, and the quiet mental work required to just keep going. Not pushing harder, but learning how to stay with yourself. Mollie is the final guest interview of season 1 of Adventure Unfiltered. But next week we'll be releasing one last episode for season 1, a reflective wrap that draws together our favourite moments and the themes that just keep surfacing from these first conversations. There'll also be some small but exciting announcements, including a new book giveaway, and we'll share a glimpse of what's coming next as we prepare for season 2, which will begin on the 6th of February. If you've been enjoying the episodes, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would consider subscribing to Adventure Unfiltered on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Please consider giving us a thumbs up, and if you have a couple of minutes to spare, perhaps consider writing us a short review. All of this really helps the podcast grow. I have a vision for this podcast and the Adventure Unfiltered community, and I'd love for you to stay with me as we see it grow together. So a massive thank you for listening again to another episode of Adventure Unfiltered. This has been an absolute joy to produce so far, and I am so excited about what's to come. This is just the beginning. So until next time, keep adventuring, and don't forget, in the wild, we remember who we are.